Okay, right. So let me try and tell you about what we've got here. I'm not going to go into every single aspect of what this tool does. Some of it's very specific to the actual business that I made it for, but there's some sort of general purpose applications, and it just sort of demonstrates that the power of VBA, basically. So what does this do? So basically, as a business, we receive orders via the format of spreadsheets, bulk order spreadsheets. So we're actually a gifting company. So a client will order anywhere from 10 to 3,000 gifts, say for Christmas, just as thank you to their customers, and that will take the format of, let's say, a bulk order spreadsheet containing a huge number of names and addresses. Now, the problem we have with that is, if you let the general public, loose on an unregulated system with very little constraints on their input, you will get a vast array of inputs in various formats, and the legacy system that we then need to input this data in to send their gifts out to them is, let me say, not particularly forgiving in the data and the inputs that you give it. It was written well before I was born, and it pretty much doesn't know anything outside of ASCII 0127, 0 to 127. And it's if it doesn't recognize the postcode, it will spit that back out at you, and it's very difficult to fix in that. So what we want to do is basically get 95 to 98% of our formatting and cleaning and validation done before it goes anywhere near our legacy system. So what do we do? So basically we will get, let's put a name here, Mr. Person. So let's look at some of the sample data that I've created to demonstrate what we get and what we need to clean up. So it's just sometimes crystal formatting needs a bit of a kick. So this, in a general scheme of things, isn't really that bad compared to some of what I've seen and had to deal with. The problem is, say, our legacy system doesn't like 30 characters in any one field, so we've come out red in there to show that. We've got an emoji here, it's not going to deal with that. We've got a hashtag here, it's not going to deal with that. It's not going to like that. You've got just a single integer in an address field, it's not going to like that. We've got just a first line of address and a postcode, which isn't particularly helpful. Obviously, we need a postal town as well, ideally a county, although strictly not a requirement since the early 2000s, but it's just good to put on there anyway. So what do we want to do? So what we're going to do here is we're going to hit tidy addresses, and that's going to basically sort all this out in one hit. So we won't check if postcodes exist for now, so I'll come to that in a second. So what we've done, we've basically removed all our funny little characters, we've converted everything to a nice and tidy proper case, we've removed any gaps in the address field, so that's all nicely formatted up to the top of the line. We've concatenated where it was just a digit with its next address field. So the other thing we needed to do was shorten those things down to 30 characters. So to save a lot of time there, for example, in the name fields, there's a hidden lookup sheet in this spreadsheet of very common first names. So we've managed to shorten Dr. and James down to Dr. and J, and James Bond has now become J Bond. So a similar approach to, say, here, we've gone from industrial estate to indest. We have a sheet where we have some common replacements, so we can change industrial to ind, estate to est, streets to da. You get the idea. So that will basically apply those shortenings until we're under 30 characters, and then that's good, we're all good to go, and then we can move on from there. So that was a relatively simple one. Now the other thing you'll get is where people have put the let's just clear that off. The address is it's there and it's valid in lots of ways and formatted in lots of ways, formatted very nicely, but it's all in one cell, the legacy system just isn't going to deal with this. We need the postcode separated out anyway. So basically what this bit of VBA is going to do is kind of come along and look for delimiters. 99% of the time it's commas. So first it does look for some other things, but we'll come to that in a sec. So it'll look for a comma. It will try and grab the postcode out by regular expression first, and then it will, if it can't find a postcode, it will assume that, as 99 times it will be, that the first thing before it hits the delimiter on the end of the string will be the postcode. So assume that's the postcode. If all else, beyond that, all bets are off, and we'll need a human to look at it, but it gets us most of the way there. So if we hit unpick, what that's done is then said, right, wherever there was a comma, we're going to split that out, and we're going to put it in the postcode field, and then we can go on and do our tidy addresses thing from there. So the other thing you'll get, we'll clear that up before we paste it across. The other thing you'll get is where they have taken a very interesting approach to the information that they've sent you in their spreadsheet, and they've included a whole other bunch of random meaningless data that, pertinent to them, they might have grabbed out of their employee database, their client database, whatever. And so we've got a whole bunch. So you can come and copy the name into the name field and then the address and blah, 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 but that can be a bit of a pain. So in this instance, we can just basically tell it, we press paste the whole thing into this unpicker sheet, tell it what's what, and for example, if it was actually split out, we could say, well, that's the address 1, and sometimes they won't have included address 5, so we'll tell it, all right, so there is no address 5, so then we're going to pick that. But in this instance, they have given us the address all as one again, and this time it's delimited. I don't know if you can see at the top of the screen here, it's delimited by, that's shown you there. It's delimited by a line break. So, but that's no worries, we can deal with that. So you say, right, I've got the name in that column. We don't want any of this stuff. We're going to blow that, blast that across there. Boom, it's all been picked out for us. We can tidy addresses and move on to the postcode validation. So the other one you'll get, the really cool one, just clear that down again, reset that. Is when you will have a set of names and addresses, but what they've done is they haven't had the decency to delimit it at all, and you've got a huge address all in one cell, and it'd normally take a human to come along and say, all right, well, unit C4, all right, yeah, we can probably get, oh well, no, that's Fort Wellington Industrial Estate. So we want that on address line 1, we're going to want that on address line 2, Military Road Fell, that's the postcode, da, da, da. So for this instance, we have the It's a Mess button. So what this will do, it's kind of similar to the unpicking process. However, once we've tried to find a postcode with regular expression, we will then look at the string, and there's another hidden sheet with some split strings, as I call them. So it will say, right, road. Okay, normally most addresses is going to be something road, and then you're going to split it from there. And then Fareham, if it's a postal town, or Luton for a postal town, normally a way. So Camford Way, most people would split that address there at Way and there at Luton, and that would end up fairly sensible in address 1, 2. So if you think about this carefully, you might have already spotted a problem where you might have something like London Road or Bath Street or something like that. So what that will also do, it'll take that into account and say, okay, I found something that I think might be a split string. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the next word and say, well, that's road. If that's another of my split string lists, I'm actually going to split it there rather than before. Okay, not perfect, can be fooled, but it gets us 98% of the way there. So if we hit It's a Mess, no, sorry, let's actually remember to tell it that that's an address as 1. So yeah, so It's a Mess. So now it's gone and analysed the addresses and said, right, I think that's where you need to split it. Road, close, street, da 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 da. You get the idea. So I'm going to send that across to sheet 1. So now we've only got a tiny bit of tidying to do, which will probably be dealt with by that. So that's, again, the tidy addresses has sorted that out. Shortened industrial state. Again, you need a human to cast snow over it, but it saves an awful lot of drudgery. So Postcodes. So what we'll normally do here is we've got, well, I say normally, I just said normally, you've got a regular expression that's going to validate this postcode. Let me just grab some of this, the other test data I was working with. So as you'll see here, something we can do, a very common error that you'll find is instead of SP70QH, people put SP70QH. Now that is an invalid postcode, and it won't show you yet because when I hit tidy addresses, it's gone and said, well, that's probably because I found a 0 in there. I won't show you the code, but basically it will look for a list of common errors in postcode and automatically suggest it and automatically correct it. And then so once we come here, so right, well, this postcode is invalid. You cannot have a postcode like that in the UK. So you know, you need to sort it out because it cannot exist. So at this point, you do need to use a bit of you know, a bit of googling and that kind of thing to say, okay, what do these people actually mean? Find the correct postcode, and sometimes things can look a lot like a valid postcode, but it's actually not. So let's just say it doesn't really matter. We can just put that in. Okay, now we've got valid postcodes. Now, just because a postcode is valid in terms of its format doesn't mean that it actually exists in England, or you know, the UK. So what we need to do is take the ONS postcode directory, which is a list of every postcode in the United Kingdom that's actually been assigned. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to download that, split out the files it gives you into a folder. And then I'm not going to go over this in too much detail, but basically we need to process those files. They'll have about 40 columns in them that we don't need, and we only want one, the actual valid postcode. And what we're going to do is, I'm not going to hit go because it will take a while to do everything. And then that will get those postcodes out of those sheets. And if you look on the sheets in this workbook, you'll see we have an awful lot of hidden sheets that happen to be named with the postcode prefixes. So we can then go in, look at those sheets. Does this postcode exist? If it does, great. If it doesn't, then we need to do a bit more investigative work. So then we can hit check postcodes. So that's gone and looked up postcodes. And it said, yeah, fine. We haven't found. No postcodes weren't found. We didn't skip any because sometimes what you'll find is let's go bring this back in. So if we were to do that, and then say, right, I don't notice this, and I just go, oh, I'll check if the postcodes exist. So let's skip that one because it said, well, it's not valid, so I'm not even going to bother looking it up. So you need to go and fix that. So then let's say we find a valid postcode for it, doesn't really matter. So then we hit check it again, boom. So it happened very quickly. So it's 7 skipped because you know, we looked at those, they're valid, we know they exist, I'm not going to bother looking it up. It's again one of those things where it doesn't seem that great on 9 addresses, but when you've got 2,000 to do, it does save you an awful lot of work. So once you're happy with everything, you would then, this is one of the things, it's fairly specific, but I just sort of quickly do it. So this will then, once you're happy, you obviously need to export everything out the spreadsheet for import into legacy system. And this will email that file to you with a unique identifier that you can set various settings on. I'm not going to do that because it will throw an error because we're not on the right network that has the right email server on it. So what would then happen, you go to build the files, it builds those into a text file. It gives you the correct commands to put into your legacy terminal to go and grab that file off your system and put it into its brain. And yeah, if you I won't go into too much about what this ATI fruit and stuff does. It's effectively, it's quite specific, but it's generating because if you wanted to say we want to give them an identifier. So we want to split these people out because we might be sending a slightly different thing to each address. We can give them an identifier. and then it will then if we just hit that there, hit build the files, so then that's given us, as you see, the commands are now different. We can pop them onto the clipboard, paste it into our legacy system, and yeah, that's saved us an awful lot of work. So I won't go into too much of how the code works unless you want to ask me about it at an interview somewhere. So yeah, I'm amazed if you're still here at this point, but yeah, just what I'd give it's quite a quick demo of what this thing does. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.